welcome back to the Flyers Nitty Gritty podcast with your host, Yariv Wallach, and my partner in crime, Jamie Baskow. Jamie, how you doing, buddy?
What up, man? After the Flyers smoked the Bruins, 4-1 because they played better. It's not because that the Bruins were rusty. I just want to make that clear. It's just because the Flyers are a better team, in my opinion.
I think I would agree with that statement. I think we're watching a whole new level of team here, and we're going to get into that. So let's kick it off. Let's talk about it at the beginning. Okay, so quick recap: Flyers beat the Bruins 4-1 for the first game of the year. That was on I was about to say Tuesday. What day was that on already? Oh my God, Sunday. Oh my God, Sunday. Thank you. So the game was on Sunday. 4-1 win for the Flyers. Raffl walks away with a goal. Thompson walks away with a goal. Myers walks away with a goal. And Lawton walks away with a goal. All of them epic in their own right during that game, I would say. Like the initial goal by Raffl was beautiful. Thompson's surprise goal. It always seems to happen, something like that. Myers, which is, maybe the nail in the hammer, just kind of ended that one after that goal. And then Lawton with that, that kind of beauty at the end. It was a good one, Jamie. What do you think? What do you think about our first postseason game of the year?
Well, after the first period, I'm going to be honest, I was a little concerned because the Boston Bruins really took it to the Flyers, and they let in shots 12-6. So it wasn't. It was to be expected that teams were going to show a little rust, and the Flyers are definitely the more rustier team at that particular time. It took a period for the Flyers to get their footing in and get their feet underneath them. And when they did, they were clicking on all cylinders. And that's why I say, what really annoyed me throughout the game was the commentators constantly just said how rusty the Boston Bruins were. No, that's not the case. They were leading in shots 12-6 at the end of the first period. If it was not for Carter Hart, Lord knows how many, goals they could have had. They could have easily been up that period 5-0. And it wasn't like Hart. Hart.
I'll fight you on that one.
Hart made many tough saves in that first period to keep them within striking distance for the Flyers to finally get their footing. And what happens? The second period comes, and then the Flyers pot a goal. Michael Raffl. And then shortly thereafter, you're getting 2 goals from your fourth line mates. So Nate Thompson pots a goal, and then Boston scores a goal. And what happens? 8 seconds later, the Flyers didn't fizzle out. That to me, the Myers goal changed the whole complexion. That was it. That was the icing on the cake. 8 seconds. 8 seconds. It looked like Boston was just going to come back. It looked like the momentum was going to start swinging their way. And here comes Felipe Myers, a rookie, down the ice, and just snipes one over a beautiful shot. Over, I think it was his right shoulder, if I'm not mistaken. And Lawton pots a beauty, too. That's a high-skill goal on 1 foot. I like that. That's one of my favorite goals to see in hockey, where a player lifts her, right or left foot and just, snipes. And Lots, what? He has two goals in 2 games at Scotiabank Arena. Maybe this is his arena, But I just was very annoyed that the lack of credit that the Flyers were given, that particular game. The Flyers out-hit them. The Flyers just were more dominant. NAK had a good game, I thought, for his first playoff game. He hit everything that moved. He forechecked well, maybe not so much in the first period. He just looked a little out of sorts in the first, but second and third, he played very well. The rookies came to play, and that's what you wanted to see, was how NAK was going to play, how Carter Hart was going to play, how Felipe Myers was going to play. These are the things that you wanted to see, and that fourth line was just dominant. This is possibly the best fourth lines that we've seen in some time, and they were just dominant. They just dominated, and it's tough, for Boston to match up, with the Flyers when you have 3 out of your 4 lines clicking there, and who are you going to put matchup wise? It's a matchup nightmare, and that's what it have to be,
Yeah, no, I totally hear it. So I would argue a little bit is I actually don't think that the Bruins dominated at any point in the game outside of pulling their goalie. I think even the reflection of 12-6, I don't know if that's so much an overall play. I think it was kind of even keel. I don't think the Flyers played great in the first period. I don't think they really got swarmed. I think they got a bunch of shots from around everywhere because that's what Boston kind of does, is that they throw that puck around the net. They keep a guy like Pasternak around there just for one-timers, but a lot of those goals are dirty goals, and that's how they kind of play. So I actually expected them to try to pummel Hart, and I think the Flyers did a really good job of making sure second opportunities weren't there. They won a lot of the second battles, clearing the puck out of the zone. So while they didn't play great offensively, I think they hit the post once. I think they actually did okay. I don't think it was that bad in the first where I think they like dominant or anything.
They were just very uncharacteristic like in that first period. There was a lot more dumping and chasing from what we've been seeing with Alain Vigneault.
Sure.
He likes to lead, usually he likes his defensemen to sort of lead the rush up the ice, so to speak. Quick D-zone exit, hit it to the first forward that you see, and the forwards carry the puck in. They don't, do that dump and chase. It's very rare when they do that. It was very uncharacteristic-like, and that's what I mean, is that I think Boston was, flying out of the gate. They came and, they came ready to play.
Yes.
Carter Hart, I think, was the difference in that period to where he allowed the Flyers to sort of relax, get them calmed down, come out and get a fresh, sheet of ice, for the second period. And the Flyers made them pay for sure. So, but there was a lot of things that were going on with the Flyers that we haven't seen. But I wanted to say, I don't know if that was part of their game plan. That could have been a game plan thing too with AV because, he did mention that there were some things that were going to be uncharacteristic like throughout the round robin in terms of the lineups, in terms of different schemes, in terms of systems that he wanted the Flyers to nail down. So that could have been designed to do that.
I think honestly, Boston is a really good team. That I do think there's some point to what you're saying where maybe they kind of sat back and let them attack a little bit. I think realistically, like Boston's a really good team. Hart didn't have to stand on his head, but the opportunities weren't golden. They had a couple good ones, but so did the Flyers. I thought like the quality of opportunities were about even in that beginning, and I think after that it was really just all Flyers until they pulled that extra man. I really never felt at any point in that game that Boston was going to win. And that is not, I don't want to say it's not normal, but that is the Flyers that we've come to know of late, right? It's like that, like, while I do agree I'm not saying they played a perfect game, right? We both can agree that game, it never felt like the Flyers were going to lose. Like, I never was one, and I totally agree with you, the announcers, and we kind of know that, they were like trying to constantly give Boston the benefit of the doubt, whatever. Maybe they would have done that for us,
It's not whatever. They have to be unbiased. They have no ties to these teams. They have no ties to the Boston Bruins. They have no ties to the Flyers. It annoyed me. It annoyed me a lot.
Milbury.
It annoyed me a lot because the Flyers are a good
does
team.
have ties.
The Flyers are a good team. They are
hold on. Milbury has ties to Boston. He's not neutral. Milbury's not neutral. He has ties to Boston. He said openly that he hated playing in Philadelphia. He said, I hate Philadelphia.
That's a good point. That is a good point. But it still doesn't mean that the Flyers aren't a good hockey team. You know what I mean?
Oh.
They are a well-coached, they're a well-coached, oiled machine.
We're getting into that.
That's just ready to rock and roll. And you know what? On that particular day, the Flyers were better. Now, Boston, like you said, is a very good team. Now, they may have done some uncharacteristic-like things. Not having Tuukka Raskin. Okay, I can understand, or whatever. But Yaroslav Halak is not a bad goaltender, so you can't just, say, oh, Tuukka Rask wasn't there, let's see what happens. And I don't see many Boston fans saying that. Boston fans have owned up and said the Flyers were better. Whereas the commentators started to come on in the third period there a little bit, but I wanted a little more praise because the Flyers busted their asses, and they got some key contributions from their fourth line. And that is the depth that we have been talking about for months and months and months during the pandemic. How much depth the Flyers have in their system, and you saw it. Goals by your fourth line. It just doesn't happen overnight. I didn't see Chris Van de Velde or Pierre Bellemare just pot 2 goals, all the time, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. It just this fourth line for the Flyers was just rocking.
Yeah, man, I totally I agree with all of that, right? And what I think it is that Boston, one, had a better record during the regular season, right? Maybe not at the end, but they had a better record. And they're kind of, they're always built up as like this team, kind of like the Pens back in the day. They have that line, that perfect top line that everybody talks about. They were shut down. That top line didn't do anything, and I think I don't want to say their narrative, but their expectations. What?
Commit to the Coots line. And
Exactly. I mean, well, let me get this out. Hold on, Jamie. Let me get this out. So the whole thing is that top line that the Bruins have, it's accelerated by their team play and their depth. So this is what we've been talking about. The depth is there now with the Flyers. The coaching there is now with the Flyers. You will notice that top line can very much outplay other teams' top lines. Yeah. We will start seeing that. That is a team thing. And I think, that's the sign of a really good team. And maybe they're having trouble coping with it,
Yeah, I mean, that G. Coots Voracek line played very well. They didn't hit the, they may have not have cracked the stat sheet the way
G hit the post.
But they played, and Voracek had a very good chance, very good scoring opportunity in the first period as well. Yaroslav Halak made a very good save on his, shot. I think it was it's sort of like a mini slash breakaway. He just ran out of room. Yeah. But nonetheless, Halak made a good save. But, G. Coots Voracek, they played well. And, I mean, Provy and Niski always played well. Sanheim Myers played well. And I thought Hagen Braun played okay, too. But, that Sanheim Myers, pair, they just shut down the top line. And that's Boston's bread and butter. Is that, the Pasta, the Marchand, the Bergeron. That's a very tough line to play. But kudos to the penalty kill. The penalty killing, to me, was an unsung hero throughout the game. They didn't. They got talked a little bit by us, by the beats and stuff like that.
Yeah, but Kevin Hayes, I think it's very evident how good Kevin Hayes is. And I know that you were talking about penalty killing, but that's why it stuck out. It was a good effort on the team, but Kevin Hayes is a noticeably good player anytime he's out on the ice. And I feel like depth, again, we keep talking about it, because you're talking about the PK, what really is that? That's bottom six players outplaying their bottom six players, just like you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, to hold a Boston power play that is very dangerous, very dangerous. One of the best in the league.
Right.
You're talking about a Pasta. What do you end up with? 92, 95 points on the season or something like that? I mean,
I'll look it up.
Pretty darn close. 90-some points. I know that for sure. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy that, is a natural goal scorer, a very good playmaker. And, to hold him off the stat sheet, with the man advantage, I mean, that's saying something,
95 points.
95
for David Patrick.
So, I mean, that's what I mean. So they have players over there. The Flyers just played a very good hockey game. But Boston's power play, that doesn't mean that, they suck now or whatever. They're like the Flyers power play. The Flyers power play was 0 for 2. They cycled the puck well. They just didn't get that shot. You know what I mean? They just didn't have the finish. On the first power play, they lacked everything but the finish. The second power play, I thought, was a little more worse. They just couldn't get nothing going on the second power play and whatnot. But, the Flyers power play is going to need some time, I guess, just like Boston's power play.
Yeah, it's one game, too, though. I think the Flyers moved the puck well. I didn't see any real, I would actually say more issues maybe on the Bruins special teams at times, but they're also not big problems. I would say both. I think overall, honestly, I think it was a really good game, and I think the Flyers' depth is showing out. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about lineup changes, but, we lose Raffl right now, but the team itself, Raffl is playing on the fourth line. And again, it's obviously a very good fourth line. I'm not knocking the players, but the Flyers have an ability now to literally attack every single time the players hit the ice. It's no more do we have a line of, I don't want to say I'm not going to call them scrubs or anything like that, right? But guys who are kind of teetering on, maybe on their way out of their career, but definitely not in their prime. And even like Nate Thompson, he might not even be done for his career. He's also been traded every single playoffs to essentially play on a playoff team for a reason. It's like, and that's our 13th forward theoretically at times, right? Like you can rotate him in as well. Like we have Farabee, we have Frost, we have all this talent. So it's just interesting to be able to match that up. And that's what got the Flyers to the Cup way back in the day was depth. Nobody thought we had the best centers in the league. Nobody thought we had, well, I guess we had Chris Pronger. But, we had great talent, but we had depth. And even though we have more depth than that today. And I think that's what's hard to deal with for any team is we have a line that can score every single time it's on the ice. Like Michael Raffl is not a fourth-line player. I remember when Raffl, Lawton, and I forget who the righty there. Maybe it was Pitlick. I can't remember who it was. Somebody was playing the right there. That unit was dominant on the fourth line, and obviously we see for good reason. But they're essentially putting up points every game, and it's like they're just they're not borderline NHL players. They're good NHL players, and we have an entire lineup full of them. And I mean, Robert Haig and Justin Braun are usually back in the day probably would have been in our top four, And today we're talking about both of them being a potential 7, or a 5, or they're the 5 to 7 range on this team. Yeah. It's weird to think about.
Yeah, quote unquote, their time is done. It's our time.
Exactly.
AV just reminds me a lot of Herb Brooks, and that's why I keep doing these quotes with him and Herb Brooks, because I can only imagine what AV's saying inside that locker room and kicking cans and stuff like that, because what's going on and stuff. And you know what? That's fine. But no, in all honesty, I think that this Raffl injury is going to hurt a little more than what people think.
Yeah.
It's an excellent two-way forward. He prides his game on defense first, and which leads to better offense, especially in an AV system. And I think that's why AV loves him so much and trusts him so much, is because he knows the system so well and does it well.
Played center. He played right, left, and center. Yeah,
he can play anything. Dude, he'll play on a roof if you want him to. And that's what he does. And to me, he is one of those guys that doesn't get enough credit for the hard work that he puts in. I mean, he is nothing but more than 205 pounds or something like that. But the way he throws his body weight, he is so hard to take off he is a very good board battler. It is very hard to take that puck off against the boards. Try doing it. You won't succeed. There aren't very many players that can take the puck away from Michael Raffl, especially along the boards. He's a very good board battler. And I think that's one area that I think the Flyers now, when you're looking at the overall lineup, and now Joel Farabee has made his way in because of the Raffl injury, the one area that scares me a little bit is board battling. Who will take Michael Raffl's place along the boards? His penalty killing, which Joel Farabee can match. So I'm not concerned there, because Joel Farabee is an excellent penalty killer. He's been doing it his entire career. He did it in the USHL. He did it for Boston University. And he did it for the Flyers, in opportunities. So I am not concerned about the penalty kill, because I think he could maybe not much equal Raffl, but he can get him to that level, And,
you can rotate other guys to take those minutes too,
The only question I have, and I think we'll touch on that, is now what do you do? Because minus a Raffl could fit in anywhere. He could play on the checking line, the third line. He could play on the energy line, the fourth line. He could play in the top 6. Now, Joel Farabee, does he have enough muscle to play on the third and fourth line? You know what I mean? That is the question. Does he have the durability at this particular time?
Especially for the playoffs, right?
Yeah. That is. This is where I think AV is probably thinking right now, and he probably had a few martinis about it. And, at the Skytop, the Falcon Skytop bar,
all right.
Thinking about what's going to happen and, the overall lines, because this is sort of like damper the parade a little bit. Even though Joel Farabee, it's not that bad, but when you're thinking about it now, you might have to possibly break up a very good second line who's been rocking. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, listen, okay. I think you bring up great points. The thing is, though, that third line, while I do like all of the players individually, I wouldn't say any of them have played poorly. I didn't like that combination of the three anyway. I actually think they could use a little more dynamic play. So I think the first opportunity is try Joel Farabee, or you try Morgan Frost and you shift Grant over to the wing. I wouldn't jump to that, or Frost on the wing if they really want to try that. But I would try to bring a little bit of scoring on that third line. I'm not saying that's what AV is going to do, but that would be something I would look to do. If they're going to break up that second unit, there has to be a better reason than just Michael Raffl leaving. That's what I would say. It's like, I agree with you, but that was a fourth line move, right? It's like what I would try to do is, one, they could just fill Farabee in on that line, right? They're playing really well. Farabee does the same things Raffl does, but he doesn't have the physical strength like you're saying. So the question is, like, will they just try something simple, or will they mix stuff up? I think Vigneault should stick with that second line. He broke it up during the season, and I like that he went right back to it now because he knows it works. So maybe he'll be like, oh, well, let me try something else. That could happen as well, right? And then he'll go to the playoffs. But I really like that second line. Not that Farabee can't do it well also, and they need the third line depth, but I guess if Lawton goes there and scores, though, then everybody's wrong, right? If JVR, Lawton, and Grant are a great combination, I think that's interesting. But even on paper, that doesn't interest me that much. I would really try Farabee. I would try Farabee there first, and if not, I would try to get, maybe even try JVR up on that second. Oh, no, move him up. Move him up with Konechny and Hayes. They tried it before. Maybe try again. I don't know. But I would agree. Those are the options. Otherwise, you have to start mixing stuff up. I would really like to see if they can put Morgan Frost or Farabee with JVR and Grant, because that combination has really worked. Maybe shift up and drop down Aube-Kubel. I don't know if I'd want to do that, or maybe want to stick with that fourth line as much as I could. So I don't know.
I was going to say Washington's a physical team. I like NAK on that third line, in my opinion, against the Washington Capitals on Thursday night. However, see, that's another thing. You have these matchups, and these are good problems to have. These are great. Listen, mind you, these are not bad problems to have, because there's a lot of teams that suffer this injury, like Musin going out tonight.
Farabee would be in their lineup.
Like Musin laying motionless on the ice. Now who's going to come in and take Musin's spot? For the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now we have Ghost, the Flyers, on the other hand, have sitting on the bench. So if God forbid an injury were to arise, to a defenseman, they could always shift in Ghost, who has played in on the top pairing, middle pairing, and bottom pairing. So, but these are great problems to have. So this isn't a terrible situation. It's not like the sky is falling and it's doom and gloom and the Flyers are done. No, we're talking about, fans, here is where to place Joel Farabee, because he is too talented, in my opinion, to get bottom 6 minutes. This dude is so freaking good, and he's going to be so damn good that you want him in the top 6. And if you have him on that third line or fourth line, regardless if it's the playoffs, it possibly could hinder his development. Do you want that to happen? And I think that has made its way into AV's mind as well. So, would that be a demotion in his head, Joel Farabee? I'm not good enough to play in the top 6. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. I'm not saying this is going on.
I don't think so. I think in a situation like this, if you make it in that lineup, they have to recognize the level of depth. Like, think about if Frost and Farabee were in this lineup 3 years ago. They 100% would be. 2 years ago, they would be in the line. Like, have any even other options where they have to recognize the level of talent that they have around them, and that it's kind of a privilege to be in the lineup. That just to say that. But I agree with what you're saying fundamentally, but I don't think the third line role is I don't think it's the same thing as playing a fourth line role where you're most likely playing 7-8 minutes a night. If that line doesn't work, though, they're going to have to change stuff up anyway. Like, maybe it's best to put Pitlick on that third line anyway and just break up that fourth line, create something new.
That's why I liked him the other day. Yesterday, I liked how he called out JVR a little bit, you know what I mean, and said, hey, I expected more. He came in, had a very good camp, and I thought JVR did have a good camp, and he was flying from all the footage I saw, and he in the scrimmages, he played well in the scrimmages. But yeah, there you go. And
just not doing it.
He has been notoriously a slow starter, but I do like AV saying, hey, you had 2 games. You had to get your feet wet. You didn't make yourself noticed at all because I honestly at times I didn't even know JVR was on the ice.
That third line was
very uncharacteristic because right before his injury, he was playing his best hockey of the season.
I agree.
And so I was like, wow, he really turned into a playmaker because seeing him make some passes that literally we haven't seen him make very often. And then, now seeing him and he's not even noticed, this was a great time to call out JVR. And I think that's why AV did it. I think him and JVR may have had a conversation and he was like, hey, I expect more from you because you know what? We're going to need you now more than ever, being that Michael Raffl has gotten hurt, to get this line going.
No Lindblom, no Patrick, right?
That's what I mean.
Year.
Now, start to, okay, do you want Morgan Frost? Now you got another rookie, and then Bunnerman hasn't played. So we're going down the list now of people who don't have playoff experience, So that's where AV was at yesterday, and he was saying that may not be the only change. So let's see what happens. Who knows? It could be, man, what you say, I would love to see a Farabee Frost line. That'd be great.
Well, okay, so think about this, okay? So what if you redesign the bottom 6? What if you put JVR with Frost and Farabee?
Oh, man.
And you create like a dominant fourth line that you use a defensive role with Grant, Thompson, and what's his name, Pitlick. What if you do something crazy like that? I don't know if it would work, but if you think about that third line, it'll be a lot more dynamic. That's why I suggested keeping Grant with Frost, because Grant is very good defensively. He's better than JVR defensively. So that's where I'm like, Grant, JVR, and a dynamic player, maybe like Frost even. I think that's worth a shot. If they were willing to do Frost with Giroux and Konechny, I mean, can't put him with a couple guys like JVR and Grant or Pitlick,
Before the pause,
they can score.
What was that third line before the pause? In all seriousness, I forget. That's why I'm asking.
That's a good question. Well, I think Lawton was on that line. I think they took Lawton and put him on the third line with Grant. Yeah, it was Lawton and Grant, right? It was Grant fourth line center. Grant might have been fourth line. Damn, what were they? Wow, I already forget.
I know Farabee was in Lehigh. I know they sent him to Lehigh. I know that for a fact. I remember that. Yeah. Then JVR got hurt. He called Farabee because of the injury to JVR. So I would possibly go with whatever that third line was before the pause, in my opinion. I think that because they had very good chemistry. Grant, had a goal and 4 assists, and in 7 games played. 7 games played, he had a goal and 4 assists. You can't complain with 5 points in 7 games. Nate Thompson had 1 assist or something, in the short time that he played as well. So it wasn't like that Grant and Thompson weren't producing. I think I would possibly go with whatever that third line was before the pause, and I think that was JVR, Grant, and Pitlick.
I think Pitlick, yeah. I was thinking it's Pitlick too. I'll find something, Jamie.
I'm pretty certain that's what it was. Or it was. I'm pretty certain that's what it was. I would give them another game, if worst came to worst. I just think that Washington, depending on how the Flyers come out, I could see like AV not panicking because it's no panic because it's the round robin. And he said that this is to just give them ammunition to get, better for August 11th. There's a bigger picture, for that. So I think AV wants to get them prepared, for August 11th, obviously. But I think that he could intertwine some, makeshift some lines, mid-game or something,
Yeah, so
they're here north.
Jamie, I got it. You were right. It was Pitlick. So we were right. So it was Pitlick, Grant, and JVR. So it's essentially what we have now. It's Albay Kubel is on the fourth line. So maybe that's something they try is drop down Albay Kubel, put Pitlick, Grant, and JVR together. I mean, I think that's actually a good move. And then I guess
play the right side. I want to say that he can.
Who?
He told me that he'll play. Him and Konechny.
Who?
Both. Huh?
Who you talking about?
Joel Farabee. He can play the right side. He doesn't care where he plays.
Oh, yeah, I know. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I want to make that. I'm not saying to you. I'm just saying to the viewers that just because Joel Farabee is listed at, as a left winger, he can play the right side. And him and Konechny don't care. As long as they're playing. They both flat out told me that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, personally, I would love to see Joel Farabee in that top six again. But I don't want to take that away from Scott Law, and he deserves that position. And that's why I was like, just give Farabee that opportunity on that third line. He's smart enough. You make a great point. His physical game is not there to the playoff level yet. You can still see him kind of get pushed off. His skill game, his brain, all of that is there. But if that game gets rough and tumble, that's why Albay Kubel is on there. I understand. So that's why I was thinking, get creative. Maybe it's Nate Thompson, Farabee, and Albay Kubel, and Pitlick moves up.
I think that's... So it sounded like yesterday that he was just plugged in as the fourth line, on the fourth line. So I think that's where AV's probably going to
just do a simple swap. Yeah.
Just swap one for one, which makes sense. You know what? At the end of the day, I trust AV. So whatever he comes up with, whatever he makes, you know what? He's a damn good coach. He is a Jack Adams coach for a reason. A finalist for Jack Adams for a reason. We have to trust him at this point. But I agree with you. I would not like to see that second line broken up just because they're producing. Now, if they weren't producing, then we could talk. But Lawton has 2 goals in 2 games as a 2 LW. Now, if you move Farabee there, that could add more pressure. In the same token, a reverse effect, that could add more pressure for him to contribute. Because, when you're adding more pressure, sometimes that's bad for your first playoff experience as well. So you want them to be as comfortable as possible. But if you're slotted in on the second line, you're producing. You're supposed to produce. You know what I mean? That's how teams do. Okay, this is a producing line. Top line, second line. Like we said, every line every player has a role. You know what I mean? And that's what
fair
podcast. You know what I mean? And he was so right by that. Second line,
absolutely.
They're supposed to produce. Now, if Farabee doesn't produce, now we got a problem. You know what I mean?
But he's got to be able to play. He's got to be able to play a more shutdown role, like you're saying, and that requires a physical game. I think it's it. But anyway, hold on. Let's talk about Ghost for a minute here, and then we got to move on. We got a bunch of other topics. So, Ghost. I think. Well, let's just start on this. So, Ed, opportunity here for change. He's probably going to experiment a little bit, but we don't know if that's necessarily going to reflect in the game lineup. We don't really know. But we do anticipate that maybe Ghost gets in there. Do you think that Ghost has a chance? I personally think both Braun and Hag played well. I understand why they went Hag, Braun. If you look at the PK minutes, it's a lot easier to put Myers on a power play. Than it is, to put Haig on the power play or whatever. Haig can always play PK. Braun can always play PK. Having said that, maybe an opportunity, if it's not Washington, I thought maybe even Tampa Bay might be a better opportunity to bring in a guy like Ghost see if he can get back into the swing of things. Personally, my biased vote is absolutely yes. I would have played him. I would definitely be playing him against Washington. But I'm a little bit biased. I want to see him back. So he has a history of doing well against Washington. So I would be very interested to see him on that bottom pairing. I don't even know what a bottom pairing is because if you look at the minutes, everybody's even except for Provorov at this point. But, I would definitely like to see Ghost given a chance. What did you say?
Yeah, that aside from Provy and this, like Sanheim and Myers, together.
Everything's yeah. Well, I'm just saying it's like 20 minutes a night for every defenseman, but Provorov.
But I'm going to be honest. I do believe that Ghost is going to get in there for Thursday. It sounded like AV yesterday. Again, I keep going back to that press conference, but it sounded like he was uncertain on the entire lineup, and I just don't think it's just the on the forward level there. I think it was the defense level there too, because I think he knows that. And as a matter of fact, I do know him and Mike Yeo both know on how much work Ghost has put in. They both know that how good he has looked. They also know that they may have to get him some minutes to keep him fresh, because when you're just, in practice and stuff like that, now it's the time to get him into a game just in case, God forbid, there is an injury. That way he's ready to go and he's not just coming in, and stuff like that, so this is an unusual playoffs that we're experiencing here, so players might be more tired than they are. I mean, typically during the season and stuff like that, when things are starting to get ramping up, these are exhibition games to where some people aren't even playing, on this particular night. And then they have split squads, and different things and stuff, so like sometimes you get a day in between practices, off and stuff, to where now you're only given 1 day off a week. That's a lot of, toll on a player's body now that they've been off for 5 months, that they're not accustomed to this type of rigorous activity. Not saying that they didn't work it out at all. I'm just saying when you're playing a game, it's a little different than just practice or working out in the gym. So I firmly believe that it will be a Ghost Braun pairing on Thursday against the Washington Capitals. I firmly believe that the Sanheim Myers pairing is set. I don't think he's moving that at all. I firmly believe that the Provy-Niski obviously pairing is set. That's not moving at all. The only logical way to get Ghost in is to remove Robert Haig, and this is not from bad play from Robert Haig by any means. This is just get Ghost in, see what he can contribute. If he could, because like we brought up earlier, the power play was 0 for 2, against Boston. The power play also didn't strike in the exhibition game. So you might want to get him in, for the Washington Capitals, maybe put Ghost Sanheim back there, see what happens, or Ghost Niskanen back there or something. And, in PP2, I would presume that's where he's going, because I think they want familiarity on PP1. So, and if Ghost is in the lineup, he's going to be on one of those power plays. That's typically how the Flyers have been operating.
Well, Ghost could slot in.
And that's what I mean.
Could slot in on the top unit, for sure.
Want to get him a look to see if he could give that power play a jump, and maybe he provides that way. And
I've been saying this for a while, though. I mean, it's important to recognize what caliber player he is. Like, again, not a knock on Haig, but Haig at his peak is not the same value as Ghost at his peak. Ghost getting back to form is potentially another top pairing defender. It's like, I know that sounds crazy to some people, but you don't put up 65 points in this league. That you don't do that. That's not like a common thing. You're not a guy who puts up those kind of numbers. And, like, that just doesn't happen.
Kevin Hayes hasn't even hit 65 points.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, what? I was like, anybody who brushes that off is like, yeah, whatever. Everybody's got their year. He did it twice. You don't do that by accident. You're highly incentivized to get this guy going. Having said that, I don't want to forget about Robert Haig. We're going to need him. We're going to need all of them. That's where I understand the move. A physical team like Boston, Ghost is not going to play as well against Boston as he would maybe even like Tampa Bay, a team that's like heavily focused on puck movement, speed, execution. That's where Ghost is going to shine. So, I think Washington is definitely that type of team, but they are a little more physical. So it'll be interesting. But I would love to see Ghost in there, man.
I just think that there's something else. I don't. AV has not lied. And I'm not saying lie. Sorry, lie is a strong word. AV has not skipped the beat with the media, I should say. He just doesn't throw stuff out there to just throw it out there and keep the media questioning and stuff like that. That's not the type of person he is. He's straight and narrow. You ask him a question, who's going to be the starting netminder, he'll tell you, and stuff like that, So, like, if you ask him what the lineup is, he's going to tell you. And he's been very good that way, and he promised the media, he promised us last week, if you want to know the line pairings, ask, and I'll tell you the line pairings for the practices and stuff and the D pairings and stuff, because we don't get that information right now for obvious reasons, right? So, and it has nothing to do with the NHL. I'm not saying they're doing a bad job on that end. It's just they're limited resources. There's so much more stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't even know, that sometimes they don't even have a chance to tweet out or say who the line pairings are, who are the D pairings, for that day. It's nobody's fault. But AV is a straight and narrow guy, so I don't think he said that there could possibly be more changes. And I just happen to think that, that Ghost is going to get a look on Thursday night against Washington Capitals. And face it, if the Flyers win, they can do no worse than the third seed. So this is a big thing here. If the Flyers win, all they have to do is win, and they win the top seed now. So it's crazy stuff, man. But it's the truth. If they win, they get the top seed.
And I think they're absolutely capable of doing it. I want to make that clear. I can see the Flyers beating all three teams. Again, that is what I am watching from this team. I've been watching hockey for a long time. Again, I'm totally biased, fine, but I know what I'm seeing. We just did that to Boston. That's not by accident. It's not happening by accident. It's happening over and over again for very similar reasons almost every time. Goaltending depth, defensive depth, offensive depth, execution. It's like literally been the story since at least halfway through the season. The AV system just took over, and that's where we are today. And I was saying this before the show, Jamie. That's how we know this is real, because they took a big gap in between, and they went right. And maybe not the same caliber. Maybe they weren't up to snuff where they were at the end of last year, but they came in and went right back to work on the system they were playing, the way they were playing, the emotion, the tenacity, the teamwork, the camaraderie. It's still there. They didn't lose it because of 4 months off, which is usually longer than an off season. And you see it's still there. The foundation has been laid. And theoretically, we're watching the start of a really fun decade. Thank you, Ron Hextall, and now Chuck Fletcher.
And that's why I think it's funny you mentioned that, because on your tangent there, I think that Brian Elliott is going to start on Thursday against the Washington Capitals. I
was thinking that too.
A lot of fans won't be happy. Not necessarily that they won't be happy. It's just like they want to ride Carter Hart, and I understand that. Carter Hart played a hell of a game against Boston, and I understand that they had 3 days off in between before the next game. Technically 4 days by the time the game ended and stuff, because the game ended. What time did it start? 3? No. Okay, so 4 days there. So, but because they'll play at 4 p.m. on Thursday. But Elliott is 2-0 against the Washington Capitals. He beat them. He didn't see rubber for 8 days, on one of those games in February. What does he do? He comes in and lights it up and beats the Washington Capitals. What was it, 5-1, 5-2? A dominating performance. And I think that he made some really good saves on Alex Ovechkin. So, keep Alex Ovechkin on the sheet. You damn well did something right. And I think, to me, the success that Brian Elliott has against Washington Capitals, for whatever reason, I think that would be a perfect opportunity for him to get in. And then I would start my best netminder going for the win, going to clinch it all in Carter Hart. You know what I mean? And, against Tampa Bay. Because Tampa to me is the toughest team for the Flyers right now to face. I just, Tampa Bay just has everything. They got scoring and whatnot, and they are sort of a physical team and whatnot. But I just think that I would want Carter Hart in there, as opposed to Brian Elliott. I would want my number one netminder. Hey, this is a big game here. We're going to clinch this thing. We're going to get the top seed if we win. I would want my number one netminder in that situation as opposed to my backup netminder, putting him in that odd predicament, who hasn't seen rubber in a little bit now, to come in and play a heavily touted, Tampa Bay Lightning. No, I don't think, I think that could have a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. I would just think.
Well, and he's probably going to sit in the beginning too, right? Like, if you don't play him now, I mean, when is he going to play? He could end up, like, what if the Flyers play 7 games and Hart plays in all 7 of the games of the first round? Elliott never plays a game. It's like, these aren't actual playoff games, at least for us. Maybe for the other teams, but for us, they're really not. They're placement, right? It's a round robin for us. It's not really, I know it's supposed to be playoff, but it's not. The games are less intense than they are the games that are up for survival. It's just the way it's going to be, So why not? Why wouldn't you play Elliott now, get him ready? Hopefully, you don't want to see Hart get hurt. In fact, if this was a video game, you would play Elliott in all 3 games and just hold Hart for the important ones. It's not, right? He actually has to get warmed up and everything. So I think it makes sense. It only makes sense to give Elliott. And I think for all the reasons that you said, I'm right there with you. You don't want to throw Elliott in front of a firing squad.
No, not at all. Anyway, not with his first taste. Not with his first taste.
He can handle it, though.
He can, but he can because he's a professional and he had a really good camp and he's
a veteran.
Played very well in the exhibition game, against the Pittsburgh Penguins and stuff. But to me, I want to keep my backup netminder fresh just in case the ball goes south. Whether it be against Tampa Bay, or whether it be, even in the first game of the playoffs, for that matter, whomever we will play on August 11th, So, like, he may play a bigger role. Who knows? I mean, I think that Carter Hart is phenomenal. I think he's going to put up play a very good playoffs. I think he's going to be a key catalyst. But I'm just saying if not, you always have, a fresh Brian Elliott back there for sure.
Yeah. And honestly, I think this team should be at a point where, just like Boston is expected to win with Halak, we should be expected to win with Elliott. And I think people need to get used to that too, that a really good team doesn't need a superstar goaltender to win a game, especially one important game. Maybe it helps in a series. It will always help to have the more elite goalie. But we watched the Flyers go to the finals with 2 backups. Like, it's not the end all be all. We should be able to compete and play well with Elliott and net, even though he is our backup, right? Like, in the past, he would have been our starter. So I think people should give him some credit and some patience. And I think I agree. Let's keep him fresh and let's get him in there because we're going to need him. And I think that's exactly what AV said, if I remember correctly. But so I think we have a little bit of injury news here, I guess kind of in a way. I forget the name. Jamie, you're going to have to correct me. Otherwise, I'm going to look it up. But there was a video being shared of Oscar Lindblom skating with the team, with Brynäs, his former team in the SHL. I think it was Alexander Appleyard. I think he translated it. I forget who shared the video out. I will look it up. Thank you. Dan Sandstrom, thank you. So shout out to him. Thank you for that. So we can see that Lindblom working his way back into hockey, which is amazing to see. And let's hope that it's possible to actually watch him play. I know everybody's a little nervous about his health, and honestly, he wouldn't be doing this if it was that big of an issue. If you guys don't need to be terrified for him. You know what I mean? If he is not worried and he's going through with it, you don't know better than him and the medical staff. Let them do it. I'm sure they're going about it as safely as they can. look, he's still even in Sweden, right? So he has to come. He's going to have to quarantine himself anyway. He's going to have to pass a bunch of tests. Jamie, I'll let you say that. And then, let's hope he can play. Look, we just lost Raffle. Can you imagine if we were able to get Oscar Lindblom playing on this team, even, halfway through the first round or, for the second round or something like that? That would be amazing. Imagine having a couple of injuries, which we'll definitely have, and then bringing that type of caliber player into the lineup who not just hockey ability, but what he does to the locker room. I mean, that could be the boost we really need, Jamie, right?
Oh, absolutely. He would definitely be an emotional morale booster there for the club, and I think that would be huge going into the playoffs for sure. Not just the playoffs, but to carry them to have an extended playoff run, I think is their ultimate goal there. So Oscar Lindblom is slated to come back on Friday, according to Alex Applegard, in that very good article that came out from, I forget the gentleman's name who wrote it, but Daniel Sandstrom had the video, and that was a phenomenal video that he was able to capture of him. Flyers fans, Oscar Lindblom used to play for Bruins. So there's a history there, but it's kind of cool that they accommodated Lindblom in such a way to say, hey, why don't you come and skate, with us and stuff like that? We would love to have you. I think that's kind of neat. They didn't have to do that, but, being who he is, Lindblom is Lindblom. He was a hell of a player for Bruins anyway, so of course they were going to accommodate him. Regardless of his cancer, I'm not just saying that they allowed him to do it because of cancer. He was just a hell of a player for Bruins, just in general. But so he's slated to come back Friday, but per the NHL protocol, you have to have 4 negative tests in a 4 consecutive day period. He doesn't necessarily have to quarantine. I guess quarantine himself away from the team. I guess you can't come out from your hotel room or whatnot, or, whatever. I'm not sure those type of, what goes on, in terms of that. But he has to have a 4 negative tests in a 4 consecutive day period. Then he can rejoin the team. I have seen some tweets saying that he will rejoin the team on Friday. He will rejoin the team on Saturday. No, per the NHL, you have to have 4 consecutive tests, 4 consecutive negative tests in a 4 consecutive day period. So, but Lindblom does turn 24 on the 15th of August. So I think he's trying to come into town early to celebrate his birthday with Philadelphia Flyers, to a team that has, really been there for him, been his support staff, been with him the whole entire way. So I think that's important for Lindblom to share that birthday with his friends and comrades, and stuff. But yeah, Reef, you make a very good point. Just imagine, I will not throw anything away from Lindblom because I didn't even expect him here in general. So, for him to be here, not just kick cancer's ass, but for him to be here, people should not be worried. You know why? Because they have the best doctors in the world there. Okay, so, where I go to PRMC is definitely not the caliber, and this is no shot at them. This is definitely not the caliber of doctors that the Flyers and that, that Toronto bubble has. They're not just going to take any doctor, over there. They're going to take the best doctors in the world with them to make sure that these athletes are well taken care of, to make sure that if they do come down with COVID, that it can be handled properly from a person who knows best. This is the stuff that is very apparent to the NHL, and this is something that became serious to the NHL. So if his oncologist tells him to go, and this oncologist is from the University of Pennsylvania who's been with Lindblom the whole way, why should we be his doctor? That doesn't make sense. This person who his doctor is knows more than us, knows more of the risks that can be. But if there are no risks, then there are no risks. I'll tell you, they had over 7,000 tests, 7,000 tests since the start of the hub city, which was what? Which was July 28th, right? July 26th. From the 26th, because that's when they arrived. That's Sunday, the 26th, July 26th. From July 26th to what's today's date? August 4th. They have had 0 positive tests. 0. A goose egg. Over 7,000 tests have been conducted. 0 positive tests. To me, that bubble is safer than him being in Sweden. That is safer than him being in Philadelphia. That is safer
yeah.
than any part.
I totally agree with that.
That bubble is the safest thing to keep Oscar Lindblom himself safe. So why
honestly, that's probably what the doctors told him. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like,
absolutely, right? Why would they? If there was a risk, they wouldn't allow him to go. That is against their ethics. You know what I mean?
Max Domi wouldn't be playing.
Exactly. That's what I mean. Max Domi wouldn't be playing. Capo wouldn't be playing. A lot of these players, wouldn't be playing, So, like, there's many players with diabetes in the NHL, and a lot of them have, okay, this is no shot at the players that did opt out. I understand why, and stuff, but the players that, have played, Max Domi, Capo notably, with ailments, and they are doing well and have not tested positive at all. So, to me, that bubble is safe. If his doctors are saying go, it's a go. If the Flyers doctors are saying it's a go, it's not just the Flyers doctors. They have to adhere to his oncologist, and I'm sure there's another doctor on top of that oncologist. I'm sure there's an overall, doctor that says, okay, yeah, he can go. You know what I mean? So it's not just one doctor. We're talking about multiple doctors here, and it would be against our ethics if it was such a if it was a health scare or something like that. It would be the code that they signed up for.
Yeah. Well, I honestly think it's incredible that he's even being considered, and if he can come over here and play in the lineup, I am elated. Neither one of us would think in the beginning of the year that would happen, but maybe this is a year of miracles. It would be. I can tell you one thing: if the Flyers win a championship this year, I'm not hiding from anybody for COVID. I'm willing to die. I'm going to say that publicly. I am going to panic. I am going to run in the streets, and short of the police grabbing me and throwing me in a cop car, that's probably the only thing that'll stop me from freaking out on that day. And I probably will forget my mask in that moment. I promise you.
Well, I'm climbing Billy Penn, and I'm taking a case of Mad Elf with me.
It's a day I've been dreaming of forever. So let's hope they're good enough to make that happen. So let's wrap it up here. We're getting close to the end. So let's talk about the NHL real quick overall. Let's talk about the East. We don't need to worry about the West too much. It doesn't affect us at this point. Let's talk about the East. We got some games going on in the background here. What do you think? Let's start with the one that's probably most relevant to us. Penguins, Canadians, 1-1 in the series. Canadians take the first game in overtime. Pens win 3-1 in the rebounding game. They got a couple more games here, it looks like. What do you think, Jamie?
I think the Pens win 3-1. Before this series started, I thought that Carey Price could steal a game, and he did. And it just so happened to be the first game. Can the Habs beat the Pens? Absolutely. If Carey Price plays like Carey Price plays, absolutely the Habs can steal another victory and possibly. This is a big game for the Penguins here. If the Penguins lose, I mean, listen here. If the Penguins go down 2-1, that's a lot of pressure. That is a lot of pressure. But the only thing I think that gives them is that they've been there before. And they have veteran players there. They got Connor Sheary, who's been there before. They got Jake Gensel, who's been there before. Of course, Crosby and Malkin. I'm just naming some players, out there. Jason Zucker, has been, there before. Matt Murray, of course, has been there before.
Gensel.
Gensel. Even Tristan Jarry has been there before, with the Penguins at one point.
Letang. Dumoulin.
So this is a very experienced team that should manhandle the Montreal Canadiens. There should be no reason that a Dale team should win. Or,
That's fun. You got to throw a little shot there. I don't
like him. I like him. He has a great personality, but he just doesn't match up with the Pittsburgh Penguins, in my opinion.
I don't disagree. I mean, my attitude towards the Montreal Canadiens is that they're a very flawed team. They have talent. They have some very good talent in some places, but if you look at their lineup, I can literally their weaknesses are so blatant that I just cannot see them progressing in the playoffs. And I do think that they'll need some kind of restructuring, or they can wait for their young players to take off, because I think they have the young players in place to fix those problems. It's just going to take a little bit of time. The Canadiens, I just don't see them matching up well against the Pens. I see the Pens probably winning that series. It could be in 5. Honestly, I'll give it to them, but I do see the Penguins probably taking that series. Let's move on to the next one. Well, I honestly, I'll end this, and I saw this in Game 1. Don't bet against Sidney Crosby, as annoying as that is to say. Like, while Carey Price is incredible, you're still dealing with a legendary all-time great player. I can't see him allowing that team to get eliminated that early. That makes sense. So, I again, it's hard for me to bank against Sidney Crosby. I would bet on him for the comeback, not the other way around. So, yeah, give that one to the Pens. So let's move on. Actually, there's a game going on right now. This is a pretty big game, and it looks like Carolina just tied it as we're talking. So we won't know the results of this. But that series, 2-0 lead. Hurricanes take the first game. They take the second game. Right now, it's tied in the second. Little under 5 minutes in the second through. Looks like it's about 1-1. Teravainen both score. I saw some big goals the other game. I'm a little surprised that the Rangers aren't putting up, I don't want to say a better fight, but I would expect this is a series I could have easily seen go to 5. And I don't think the Rangers are as good as they played at the end of the year, but I don't think the Hurricanes are as good. I do think Svechnikov is amazing. I think they have some amazing talent. I'm not knocking the team overall or anything. I just see them both having flaws. But I just expected a closer matchup between two teams where I really don't see much difference in talent overall throughout the lineup. Though I do give the depth edge to the Hurricanes, just not in the goaltending department. I think that's going to be your point. So, I don't know. I could see the Rangers maybe winning today and extending the series, but it does seem like Carolina's about to walk away with this one. What do you think, Jamie?
No, actually, I think that the Rangers could come back and beat them in 5, 3-2. And I think that's because Shesterkin is healthy. He is playing today. And I think that's evident with the 1-1 score. For some reason, I thought Henrik would come.
Rangers were leading to start the game, just to your point.
No, I know. No, I'm just saying in general, I think they're going to win today, and I think they're going to come back and win the series 3-2. I mean, Coach Brindamore is a very good coach, but the one thing that I just don't have faith in Mrazek. If you get the Mrazek and that wheel starts to fall off there, I think that's the Achilles heel there for the Carolina Hurricanes. Mrazek was playing over his head those first 2 games. He was making some insane saves. Credit to him. Made some really good saves, especially in the second game. It made Carter Hart-like saves and with his glove. So that was unexpected of me, was to give Mrazek, the edge there. Now Shesterkin has come in, and he appears to be playing well tonight. But, Lundqvist, Mrazek got the better of Lundqvist. That's what it came down to. Mrazek was better than Lundqvist. And people could say that the Rangers don't have anybody in front of them. I beg to differ. I think the Rangers have a decent team there. I'm not saying that they have the best team. I'm not saying that they have the best overall depth, but let's think about this. If the Rangers lose and they get that first overall pick, man, now they're starting to become a scary team. You're talking about A or Byfield, coming to the Rangers. I mean, that's sort of scary there,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, now you're talking about scenarios I don't want to think about.
That's what I'm saying.
Actually, think about it. But thinking about it out loud, though, Carolina does have the edge. I'm not saying overall. I just think the Rangers, they're just a little bit younger. They're a little behind where the Hurricanes are today, where the defense of the Hurricanes is pretty well defined. You know, a lot of their forward group is well defined, while some of them are still young. And I think the Rangers have the talent to combat them. And shots right now are 20-9 Rangers. So just, you know, to that point.
Dougie Hamilton is a huge loss for the Carolina Hurricanes, so that factors in my decision as well. Now, if Dougie Hamilton is on the ice right now against Shesterkin, no, by all means, I think that Carolina would ice it 3-1. I would give this game to the Rangers, and then I think that Carolina would come back and win, you know, the fourth game. But minus Dougie Hamilton, to me, this is an entirely different Carolina.
It's a humongous loss. It's a humongous loss. I mean, you lose your top pairing defender. It's a huge loss, even though they have a pretty good team. You know what I mean? The D is deep enough for the Hurricanes where they can sustain losses, and we're seeing that, right? But it's a huge loss. I mean, they traded, I think, for Vatanen and for Brady Shea. I assume they're both playing right now. I forgot to check, actually. But
I know Vatanen.
You know, what'd you say? Sorry?
I know Vatanen is, for sure.
Okay. I don't know if Brady Shea was ready. But I know they recognize that they lost it's a huge gap for them without Dougie Hamilton. So, you know, I would agree with that. I think the Rangers have very interesting tools. I just don't see them as, I don't think you're going to skip that rebuild process just because you brought in Panarin. I just don't, you know, like, I just don't think that that's going to happen. Jacob Trouba. Forgot about Jacob Trouba. So, like, I think those two additions were great, and it obviously showed why they weren't a bottom-end team in the league. But I think you remove those two players from this team, and they are. And I think that's the Rangers' problem, is that they do not have the depth at this point to compete in a playoff run. So, at least that's where I see it. And I think that's why Hurricanes probably will take this one in the end, but it's kind of easy for me to say. I mean, they're up 2-0. So, all right, well, let's move on. We got one more. Oh, no, I'm sorry, two more. We have let's do Islanders and Panthers. To be honest with you, all day I would say Islanders in that series. I actually think the Islanders are the scariest of these teams that we're talking about right now. I think their coaching and their ability to stick to the plan. It's evident. I mean, they got a 2-0 lead on the Panthers, which I think are also a flawed team, but also indication of what the Islanders can do to you. They can suffocate you. It reminds me of a Lou Lamoriello team. It reminds me of the Devils, and I don't want to play the Devils anymore, guys. Even though we have the new Martin Brodeur, I just don't want to play the Islanders. I'm not really interested. I hope somebody else beats them. And I do think the Islanders will take that series. I think they might lose one of the games, but overall, not surprised at all that they're beating the Panthers. And I don't think it's a talent issue. I think it's just the buy-in from top down. The combination of the GM and the coach, Vlad Morello and Barry Trotz. And I think this is what it is, man. This is what it is. This is what a team does that sticks to the game plan and has enough talent to execute their game plan. I think that's what we're watching. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they sweep them. I called a sweep before the series started. I think that the Isles sweep. The Isles are one team I don't want the Flyers to face at all. For whatever reason, the Isles appear to have the Flyers number. Not saying the Flyers can't beat them, and I'm like you. I just don't want that. I don't want that narrative. I don't want that storyline. You know, can the Flyers finally whip the Isles or something? You know what I mean? Something like that. I just don't want it. I don't want it to scare me in such a way because Barry Trotz is one of the best coaches in the NHL, in my opinion. I
will say this. I don't think that there is a team in the East the Flyers cannot beat. Even though I do agree with your statement.
Well, I agree there. I think that the Flyers will get the better of the Isles, but I just don't want that narrative. I don't want it at all. It's the team that scares me. That is the team I think that could even oust the Flyers. You know, not saying they would, but if you're asking me right now, looking at it, who I think could oust them, and I think it could be the Isles, just because for whatever reason, Barry Trotz is a hell of a coach. He gets his players to play. You got Matthew Barzal back there. I love Barzal. Barzal is a phenomenal hockey player.
I do. I'm a big fan of his.
He is so darn good. He's a pleasure to watch on the ice. You know,
phenomenal.
He's got he's got all these role players there that just fit in well. Like Curtis Gabriel said, it's a team of role. I mean, Cal Clutterbuck, coming in, Varlamov, Matt Martin.
They do have Eberle. They have Ryan Pulock. Both of them scored tonight. Eberle had 2 goals.
Varlamov is a good goaltender. He was good with Colorado, and stuff like that, back in the day. But he's a good goaltender.
He is a good goalie. Just had health problem.
I just don't want that narrative, And then next year they got Sorokin coming, so they're stocked, and stuff like that at the goaltending position. This is going to be a fun.
I will say this though. I think the Flyers, the way that they're playing, is the same caliber of attention to detail that the Islanders are playing. That's why we beat Boston 4-1, and that's why I said I don't want that narrative either, Jamie. I hear you. I completely agree with your statement. But I am confident that we beat. Honestly, outside of Tampa Bay, I don't see any team beating the Flyers in the East. That could definitely be wrong. But sheer depth, the Flyers have every team but Tampa Bay. Execution, the Flyers are easily in the top teams. Goaltending, again, I'm only looking at what's on paper. And this is very similar to again, I don't watch soccer at the same level a lot of other people do. But if you look at even that team, the Olympics from a few years ago, that German team, that team didn't win. And again, they had elite talent, but they didn't win because they had the best players in every position. They had elite players in every position. So they would get an injury, another guy would come off the bench that was almost just as good. And it's that's literally what the Flyers are able to do right now, is that they have so many players who can play. I'm confident enough that if we stick to the game plan, and we have 3 head coaches, if we stick to the game plan, we have the ability to punish teams. They make a mistake, our 4th line will score. They make a mistake, our 3rd pairing will score. It's we can do that to you, and I think that is a scary, scary thing to deal with, especially in a playoffs where everybody is constantly going at 100. So you have 4th line players going at 100, and all of them are, and your 4th line players are better than the other team's 4th line players. So I think that is what our benefit is. Having said that, I think the Islanders, maybe they don't have the same level of elite talent that we do. They do have a deep team as well. Those role players, they do have very good role players, and I think Lamoriello did a great job. I think overall, I agree with you. I don't want that
in hockey, right? Lou Lamoriello makes some moves, head scratches, and stuff.
Zero disagreement.
Yeah, people. When Lou Lamoriello,
he knows what he's doing.
People are like, why'd he do that? Or something like that. And then he's got a big picture. So,
well, I think Toronto is a perfect example of how fans should realize that the popular narrative is not necessarily accurate. And Kyle Dubas is a talented GM, a young GM, an analytics GM. Look at what Lamoriello did in comparison to a team that was ahead of schedule, right? He didn't do that because of analytics. There are skills that are involved that Lou Lamoriello has tenfold, and everybody who thought that Hextall was a tyrant, Lamoriello is worse. You're not even allowed to have a beard unless it's the playoffs. So I think people need to recognize that stuff, that there are ways, attitudes of winning, and I think it's the right combination of stuff, and Lou Lamoriello knows how to do that. He forces you to buy in. If you don't buy in, you're pretty much out, and I can kind of appreciate that. So let's talk about the last matchup. This is, I guess, more the. This is also an interesting one because it's kind of an underachieving team versus an overachieving team. Blue Jackets lose a bunch of talent in the offseason. They win game 1. Maple Leafs have a bunch of talent. I don't want to say overpaid talent, right? But top-tier, high-paid players, right? And they lose that first game. Now come back, win 3-0, lose Jake Muzzin, probably long-term, which is a humongous loss for them, I would argue. Toronto, how do you see this playing out? I actually see the Maple Leafs taking this series in the end, but I think it'll probably be a 5-game series.
Holy moly. See, I have the Blue Jackets winning in 5, and I do because I think Torts is one of the best coaches in hockey. Again, I think Torts is a phenomenal coach. He gets that team to play. I don't give a damn who it is. He could throw in a little might from the Flyers, and if for some reason that person will succeed. How many people can name 5 players on the Columbus Blue Jackets?
Well,
you know what I mean? And if the average fan knew 5 players on the Blue Jackets, I'd be amazed. And I'm not saying like a fan of the Columbus Blue Jackets.
They have great players,
just not a common fan of the NHL.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean,
it's the branding of the team. It's not the talent.
That's what I mean.
It's the
branding. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You have a decent young netminder. You have a good young netminder in Elvis, but you also have Korpisalo, who's finally been given a shot, finally, in his NHL career to make a name for himself, and he is. And he's played well. Maybe not so much today. Frederik Andersen is a very good goaltender, so you're not always going to beat, that type of goaltender like that. You're not always going to have that day to beat him. And that's why I gave, Toronto 2 games, was because of Andersen alone. I just think that there's something going on in at least locker room. I can't put my finger on it. I just think maybe that they're not a team. I don't think that they bought in together as a whole, in my opinion. I just think that they're not that there's a fracture by any means. I just think that they have players that just want to put stats on the board, that are more, that way. They're not like, okay, like Giroux, he doesn't need to put up 100 points to make himself know that he's good. And I'm not saying he doesn't try to, but I'm just saying he'd much rather sacrifice points, to have his team win. And I don't know if Toronto's at that level right now. You know what I mean? Maybe some players are, but I don't think all of them are, is what I mean. And I can't say on which players are, because I don't, I'm not around in the locker room and stuff with that team enough. But that just, from me, just being around the NHL and being around the locker rooms and stuff, that's what it appears to me, is that they have all the talent there in Toronto. They just can't put it together, because I don't think the team gels together, in my opinion. Like, you're talking about the Flyers. They're going to BMO Field, throwing Frisbees, playing darts, talking about playing Jenga, playing Monopoly together, you know what I mean? Playing board games together, playing NHL 20 together, you know what I mean? They do everything as a team, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that Toronto doesn't right now, but like, there's got to be something going on, and it's not talent, because they have so much talent there that there's no reason in the world that this team cannot succeed. And like you said, losing Jake Muzzin really hurts. That's one of their best defensemen. That is their best defenseman, going down.
Riley. We got Riley.
Yeah, you can make a case for sure. And I'd probably give you that. But I'm just saying, like, that's a huge loss, man. That's not like the Flyers.
That's huge. Huge loss. It's like losing Niskanen.
Hey, Mark Friedman.
It's like us losing Niskanen.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Mark Friedman, you play a mistake-free game. Why don't you just come in? No, that ain't gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like, like, it's easier.
And they already don't play that type of hockey. It's like the last type of player they need to lose, to be honest with you. And he has the most playoff experience too. He's got a cup with the Kings. It's a huge loss for them, honestly. And I like Kyle Dubas, actually, and I'm not saying he should lose his job or anything like that.
It's not his fault.
But they need to.
I'm not saying
they need
to
do some work. Well, they're gonna make moves in this offseason. I wouldn't be surprised if we see like Kapanen finally leaving town, and Janssen, like those type of guys. Not because they're not good, but because they might really be like, okay, we need kind of a culture shift here a little bit, kind of what the Flyers needed. By bringing in Niskanen, Braun. I was actually thinking about Andrew McDonald the other day, and it just makes people laugh a little bit.
It's been all right.
Well, I was thinking about, like, look at what AV and company, I don't want to take away from the other coaches, did to the Flyers. What would have happened to Andrew McDonald? And mind you, we had to trade away McDonald. We had to buy out McDonald, right? And then we traded for Braun, So we lost a second, a third, and lost money from the team and took 2 years of a cap hit. I'm not saying it was a bad move. I brought this up before. I still love the Braun pickup. I'm not knocking it. But if you just think of it from an armchair GM, couldn't you have gotten more out of somebody like Andrew McDonald potentially? I mean, theoretically, look at the way everybody else improved. Why wouldn't have McDonald improved? I mean, you might have even been able to trade him, which is like kind of insane to think about. I kept talking about that. But, in the last year of his contract, and AV gets maybe his best season ever out of him, and all of a sudden he's like a plus 10, with 30 points, and some team is silly enough to trade for him. It's like that might have been an option too. It's like I think about how good the coaching job these guys have done, and it's like night and day sometimes, team defense wise, right? Team defense, it's night and day from teams of the past. Night and day.
Yeah, I agree. I do think that Andrew McDonald would have, been okay here, whether it be, riding the bench or, whether that. But I think there's a bigger picture here and why they made that move. I think they made that move because AV has said over and over he loves to pair lefties and righties together, and I think that was one thing, because it sort of seems like AV talks to Fletcher a lot, and I think Fletcher talks to AV a lot. Hey, what type of player? Maybe not the exact. Maybe AV's not telling him, okay, go get this player, but he gives him a sheet. Maybe Fletcher asks him, hey, what's your wish list? And tell me some things that you like on your wish list of, each position or something. And that way, when Fletcher enters the offseason, he could check, okay, he wants righties. Let me go out. Let me go get Justin Braun. Let me go get Niskanen. So now they pretty much knew that Felipe Myers was going to be here full time. So he knew he could plug him in somewhere at some point. You know what I mean?
Myers, Friedman, Ghost. Like you look at, right. And again, this is prior to knowing Warren was out.
I'm just saying righties at this particular
right.
time.
So right. I'm sorry.
Friedman would have been your right.
I'm sorry.
I think EV knew that Friedman most likely would need. He knew this team before, so I think that maybe him talking to Fletcher. Fletcher knows Lehigh Valley Phantoms. He was over there almost every weekend. So he knows the Phantoms inside and out. If there's any person that knows the Phantoms, it's Chuck Fletcher himself. So that's what was good about Chuck Fletcher. Every Friday night, a lot of times he was in Lehigh. If he wasn't there Friday, he was there Saturday. Almost every weekend. And I think that's a sign of a good GM, and it's a good GM that knows, like, if God forbid somebody were to hurt, who are we going to call up? So I think that's one reason why they bought out Andrew McDonald, and that's one reason why Justin Braun was brought in, is because AV likes the lefties and righties together.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually, Jamie, right? Because it is we mentioned this like 8 times on this show, but it is a role-based league, and having that righty, it's and that's why we're not talking about taking Braun out and replacing Braun, and replacing Ghost with Braun, right? That's something maybe Hackstall or Gordon would have done. But under AV, you do notice it's usually a lefty will come in for a lefty, a righty will come in for a righty. Sure, if they didn't have I don't think they would pick Mark Friedman over Ghost. They would put Ghost in the lineup. But if it's an equal, a lot of times, or close to, he's going to go righty, lefty. And I think you nailed that one. So we had a long episode here, Jamie. There's another game coming up. Big game on Thursday against the Caps. Let's be honest, Flyers are going to win. Come on. No, I'm just kidding.
5-2.
I like it. I like 5-2 sounds good. I'm going to go with Flyers. I'm going to go with 5-2 also. Let's go 2 5-2s. That one feels good.
I'm going to go 5-2 because I think that Brian Elliott's going to play, and that was the last score the last time Brian Elliott played, or was it 5-1? Not sure, but I think that's I think 5-2 is a good goal, a good score, and I just feel very strongly about this club. This is the best club that I've seen in some time, so they just got so much depth, man.
I completely agree. I think that Phil Myers goal, I talked about this in my gritty rant video. When he came in and just, again, they started gaining a little bit of momentum, right? They scored,
Yeah.
Bruins scored a goal. And again, Phil Myers just comes down and just rips one over the goalie. And it's almost like the Flyers just stood up and said, no. You know, like it was almost insulting in a way. And I talked about this in my Phil Myers video too, way back in the day. He is the definition of the depth on this team. He is supposed to be a future cornerstone defenseman. He's not supposed to be the number 5 in your depth chart of young defensemen. Like on all other teams, he would be a top 2 prospect guy, in my opinion. It's just you have him, Provorov, Sanheim, Ghost. Obviously, we talked about Friedman. You could bring up Haig and Morin, but then Zamula. You talk about York. Like we have so many young guys who have top pairing or top 4 potential that it's like it's insane. I love watching Phil Myers play and Sanheim, who's looked very good. And I love that pairing together. They're big, they're fast, they can both score. There's no flaws with that except for that they're young. So Jamie, let's sign off here. Anything to say to people before we exit?
Yeah, this team's a real deal. Just keep going with them, Flyers fans. The broadcasting information will be released as we get it. I'm going to check here shortly, but 4 p.m. Thursday, the Flyers whoop that butt.
Yep. Go big or go home. I love that, Jamie. Thank you for listening. Thank you, everybody. Jamie, thank you. I love doing these shows. Thank you for everybody for listening. And we see the comments. We see everybody commenting and sharing. We know our repeats, who's reaching out to us. Thank you so freaking much for everything. Seriously. For just listening to us, supporting us. Obviously we're growing at a faster rate than we anticipated. And, we couldn't be happier, and we love you guys. So, seriously, thank you so much. And remember to always stay gritty.